So I'm sitting here with Kimberly Clark Sharp at the IANDS conference in Bellevue, Washington. And Kimberly, you are a social worker.
Yes.
And not only a social worker, you're a bit of a legend in the near-death community. Let's talk about the shoe, the sneaker.
Okay.
Okay. Can you, how long ago was this?
1977.
Okay, 77. Can you lay it up quickly for us and tell us what happened?
I sure can.
Okay.
I was a younger social worker then, working at Harbourview Medical Centre, which is the trauma center for 1/4 of the United States to this day.
Wow.
Big place. I worked intensive care and coronary care. A lot of people dying because if you get to that kind of level of trauma center, you're really sick or you're really injured.
Right.
So people were flatlining commonly, brought back or not. My job was the death and dying end of it for the most part, with the families as well as patients and the staff. So I was just the social worker.
And a patient named Maria came into your...
Yes, she was admitted one night when I wasn't there, unconscious, but the next day she was awake and I met her, and she spoke Spanish and I didn't. So my main job with Maria was finding a translator. 3 days or so in there after she was admitted, she went into cardiac arrest. I happened to be on the floor. And I went in and watched her resuscitation. A lot of people, because Harbourview Medical Centre is a teaching hospital for the University of Washington.
Okay.
So you get, the thundering masses of people who arrive. And I watched an easy resuscitation and left when she was stable, but unconscious still. Later in the day, I was called back up by the nurse who said Maria was awake and agitated. They didn't want her health to be disturbed because of her agitation. Please find the translator. I couldn't. So I went up and tried to work it out with her with sign language, But it worked. We got it done because she said that she had a couple of experiences before finding a shoe on the ledge, but she was out of her body at the ceiling level of the room. I was able to tell me what was going on. Fine. Hearing is the last sense to go, so I dismissed it. There, by the way, was nothing in my universe at that time that said near-death experience.
So I've heard her say, I've had a mystical experience, out-of-body experience, but...
She didn't even go that far. She had less words than that. She said, I was there, and she pointed to the ceiling.
And you filed that in the back, and
I thought, well, I was... not skeptical. I just thought, yeah.
Okay.
And then she said like that, without even knowing how it happened, she found herself outside of her window above the emergency room. And she explained the driveway and all that just perfectly. Again, I'm going, well, her room's above the ER, so, she probably saw outside.
But the ER, you had to look at that. The ER was not...
visible.
Not visible.
No, and there's a roof over the entrance.
So she couldn't have seen anyone
There's
coming in.
There's no
the
way.
entrance.
It was not her problem. It was mine. And then the corker. She said, in another part of the building, and Harbourview is an immense structure, she said she saw a tennis shoe on a ledge.
Tennis shoe. On a ledge.
On a ledge, 3 or 4 stories above the ground. And the reason she was agitated, now this is through pidgin English, but I got it. Go find the shoe. She was just excited. She wasn't agitated, mad, or unhappy. She was just,
excited.
Get the shoe.
Yeah.
So, the luck of the Kim, I started out on the wrong side, wrong floor, but eventually, after walking around the building with nothing, I thought I'm going to have to go in and just check every room. Maria's body was in her room at the time of her resuscitation on the 2nd floor on the north end of this huge building. The shoe, as I finally found it, was on the west side of the building on the 3rd floor. Not the same part of the building, not the same floor. And not visible from the ground because I had walked around the building looking up thinking that'd be the easiest way to find a shoe. But the ledges were too wide.
What do you do with that? You looked out, you found the shoe.
Here's what I did with it. I don't know about you, but I could not support my own body weight. And I bonked my head. I looked down, and she described it as large, dark blue with white laces. Should I get it confused with any other tennis shoe out on a ledge of a trauma center? Okay. So I wasn't expecting to find anything, David. I really wasn't.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking down at the shoe. And then I'm looking out at why it's called Harbourview. Was one building a half a mile away where maybe she could get a perspective of the shoe, but she would have had to telescope or binoculars.
Your critical mind was reaching for a reasonable explanation.
As anyone would.
Of course.
Yeah. Then it was like, okay, Maria's a bird. Well, that didn't fly. And I've never said that joke in my life. But I may use it again. And then I bonked my head against the window glass because I just couldn't stand up. And it was my watershed moment because it turns out 7 years earlier, I had what we now call a near-death experience. And as a social worker, had self-diagnosed to crazy.
Yeah. It must have been imagination, or I couldn't have been real.
Highly functional schizophrenic.
Right.
And it was jumbled and unsorted, and all the assortments came together right there. Everything in my experience fell into place, and I picked up the shoe and thought to myself, there's two of us. And I set out to find others.
Your world had been changed.
Completely. And I had the shoe, and I took the shoe back to Maria.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hard to believe, but in those days when people were sick or injured, they actually stayed in the hospital until they were well enough to discharge home.
That's expensive.
Yeah. So she was there for 3 weeks,
Yes.
and the shoe was like the Shroud of Turin of Harbourview. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't an ill-witnessed event. Everybody saw the shoe because word spread. And when she discharged, she gave me the shoe. Somewhere in our garage has been my joke for all these years.
Right.
And I didn't just lose Maria right away. I followed her in an outpatient cardiology clinic for 3 years. So this wasn't a secret, cloaked experience. It was out there in the community.
So that was back in 77?
Yeah.
In 75, or was it 73, Raymond Moody put out his book,
Hadn't
Life
read
After
it,
Life.
never heard of it.
Didn't know it was out there.
However, in April of 77, 3 things happened. I found the tennis shoe that Maria had spotted. Raymond Moody's book hit the bestseller list and came to my attention, and a woman by the name of Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was giving a lecture, and a woman came up to her after the lecture and said, I want to tell you about something that happened to my son. And Elizabeth heard her first near-death experience all in April of 1977.
So it was in the 70s that this started to break upon the popular culture, and it has grown ever since. You've been involved in the International Association for Near-Death Studies since its inception?
Second wave, early 80s. It was formed in, again, about 1977. Right? That was an interesting year. I came along in, I think, 82, maybe. Early.
Yeah.
Early.
And the research has been building and building and building.
Yeah, that's been a joy. Yeah. Because it started out, my job, again, as a social worker, I actually founded a group, which is now the oldest support group for near-death experiencers in the world.
Right.
That was in 1982. Right now it's 1988, so been at it a while.
Yeah.
And what I have seen in terms of changes is that it used to be near-death experiencers came to our Seattle IANDS meeting, IANDS being the acronym for the organization. Some had been institutionalized in mental institutions, mind you. Some had been ravaged by their church community. If you didn't see the face of Christ first, then you were in hell.
Right, it was of the devil, or this was
Exactly. You're crazy, you're evil, it was horrible. People came in emotionally hemorrhaging. That has changed. Now, near-death experiencers come in, there's plenty of resources. There's scientific backup, not across the board.
Right.
There's plenty of ways to go yet, but now they're coming in because they want to share. They want to give back.
So if you've had a near-death experience and you're confused by it, you wonder if it was real, you're reluctant to share because you wonder if people will think you're crazy, really want you to tune into IANDS.org. Have a look at the resources. There's brochures and support material there. There's thousands of cases. You'll be able to look at the past conferences on YouTube and on their website. Wow.
Yeah.
Great to sit with you, Kim. Thank you. This is a legendary story in the community.
Well, horse's mouth. Someday I'm not going to be a part of the community because I'll be in heaven.
Yep.
And I'm already an urban legend, so
Yeah.
keep it going.
Okay. No pressure there. Thanks.